2 of you have already worked through Chapter 1 assignments.
My only question, is there a submit button, or do we just answer it when we see the little check mark? That's fine.
No, you just answer it,
okay.
and then I can see the check marks.
Okay.
Yes. So, if somebody has not yet done Chapter 1, please do so. So I extended the deadline there. If you previously you had passed the deadline and you tried it, I can see it, so you have to redo that again. Assignment number 1 is graded, so you should have the grades and all that. Some of you did not have partner at that time, so you did it all by yourself. For assignment number 2, please find a partner, and if you don't have a partner, come talk to me so we can find you one. It's a collaborative work. I have already uploaded assignment number 2. Is an extension of assignment number 1. So last time you had pseudocode and all that. So now you write Python code, and there are all the instructions there. Please follow instructions for the filing, for the documentation, for the coding, and all that. For default, the default is that we need to use JGrasp. I use JGrasp to make sure that your codes are running, there is no error. Some of you have submitted for lab submitted codes that I'm not able to compile. I'm not able to run. So make sure that your code that you're submitting, I'm able to run it using JGrasp. That's the other thing. We are a little bit, yes?
I noticed that you put in a grade and only had half done. If I submitted the other half later, you can come back and regrade it.
For what? If another thing, if submission is passed, late submission is not accepted. Sorry?
It's not late.
It's not late?
You gave me a grade because I only had half of it submitted.
Okay.
I went back and submitted the rest, so you're going to change things later.
As long as it's, so I will give you feedback if you submit early. And as long as the submission is not passed, submission time is passed, you can still resubmit. But if the deadline is already passed, then you cannot submit, right? So I know that we were supposed to have a quiz today, but we are really behind, so we will not have a quiz today. We want to go through the lectures and all that, but we will have quiz next week. So I want to start with talking about variables when you start programming. So when you have this is called assignments. So you are assigning a value to variable, and so I've called my variable radius. So it has a descriptive name. I didn't call it X, I didn't call it A, I didn't call it B. I call it radius because if anyone else other than me looked at this, it knows that it's a radius, right? So try to, whenever you try to create a variable for your codes, try to have a descriptive name. So if somebody else wants to read your code and maintain it later, they know what is that they are dealing with. So we have comments. So at the beginning we have a radius assigned an integer value 20. So when you do have assignment, what that means is that in memory an object will be assigned to radius, and this value actually will be replaced in that memory, right? So we have 20 assigned to radius. Then we want to compute area. So I have another variable here. I called it area. And now I have expression. So I say whatever it's inside radius, multiply that with the value of radius and multiply it by pi. And then the calculation would go to area. So here we have another object in memory that is created for area, so we can basically place the value of our variables in that specific area in the memory. Then we are using a print. What is print? So print is one of those built-in functions in Python. So functions, we have something called function in code. Functions, they have some input and they have some output. Right? Some of the functions are already built in for you, so you can take advantage of them and use them. And print is one of those ones. Right? So that's how it is. So we know it as a print, and when you call print in your code, it goes somewhere in the print library, in the Python library, and looks for that function print. And it starts executing whatever instruction Python has for it. So in this case, I'll say print, and anything that's in the quotation mark is known as a string. So I say print the average of, and then I have comma. Oops. Sorry. So I use print. First thing that I have is a string. I say the area for the circuit of radius. So that means just type whatever I have in the string. Yes? And then comma, radius. As you can see, radius, it doesn't have quotation mark, so it's my variable. What is radius? What's the value in radius at the moment?
20.
It's 20, exactly. So it says the area for the circuit of radius, 20, is area. What is inside area? Whatever is the latest value here. So that's the output of function print. These two are the amount of the quantity that is saved in your variables. So now, what if you wanted to ask user for a variable amount? So you can use input function. Input is another function such as print, but it's called input. So what that means, it prints to the screen, it asks user and wants them to enter a string, right? So that's what the user will see. And they enter something, they enter either a string or they enter a number, and they push the enter button. Then whatever is entered, it would be assigned to variable. Yes? So we have another function. We call it input. Input allows you to ask user for an input. Whatever they enter, if they enter 3, they enter 3.4, they enter their name, John, all of these will be assigned to a variable, whatever you guys have here. But this will be assigned as a string. Yes? So it is recognized as a string. So now if you want to use, you don't want a string, you want to calculate something. You need a number. What you do, you use another function. It's known as eval function, which basically evaluates the string into the integer or a number. So it changes the type of data. We have different types of data. We have integer, which is the whole number, such as 3, 4, 5, we call it integer. But then we have some other data types, such as real, which is the number plus fractional part. We talked about numbers that are so we said that a number has the integral part and it has a fractional part. So if a number such as 3, it doesn't have a decimal point or anything, It's just a whole number. We say that this has a data type integer, and that is a data type. Yes? But if it has a fractional part, then it has a decimal point. And this part is a fractional part. This is known as real data type or float, right? Or it could be a string. So right now you guys know about 3 data types: integer, real, a string. Which whatever inside the quotation mark. So a string even could be, this isn't a string, right? Because it doesn't, so the program does not recognize this as a number, it recognizes it as a string. If you wanted to use it as a number, then you use eval function to evaluate it. So if you have an expression, eval translate this to integer and then returns a number for you as a result of that.
Question.
Yes.
Can you go back one slide? On where you have input, enter string, do you have to have the quotation marks for the syntax to be correct?
For here?
Let's say you don't want them to enter a string, you want them to enter an integer.
The input is just, so
It's
here basically.
Input only allows for strings?
Input here, you tell them what to enter.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes? So that's, you're basically asking, you just want to show something. You want to tell them, enter 3 numbers, enter 4 numbers. So that is in a string,
Sure.
right? And whatever they enter, the output of input is a string.
Okay.
So it doesn't matter what you put, this is what they see, right?
So using the input function will always make that variable a string.
Exactly.
So to use that, okay. Thank you.
Yes. So input basically is a function that, so as we said, functions are black boxes, right? So this is a black box. Because input was written for you in Python, right? So you don't know what is inside input. You just have to give it an input and it will give you an output. What you give it an input is a string, so the user can see what do you want from them. Do you want them to enter 1 number? Do you want them to enter 3 numbers? Do you want them to enter their name? What is that they want? So this is a string that you put as an input. And the output, whatever is here, is going to be a string, no matter what user enters.
It's always going to be a string.
Yes.
I see.
Okay. So now, let's write a program to get 3 numbers from user, calculate the average, and then print the average, whatever we calculated. So we say number 1, eval input, enter the first number. So first, the first one, we want to get with input, we want to get a number, we want user to enter a number. That number would be a string. Then we use eval to convert the string into integer and put it in number 1. Yes? Same thing for number 3, is number 2 and number 3. Then now you have all integers, and you can basically do your calculation as an integer and print the number 1, number 2, number 3 is, and then average. Yes. So print also follows order. So what should I first print? Questions? No. Okay. So second rule. Second rule is that when you name your variable. or there will be a time that you need to write function, so you need to name your own function. The things that you need to basically follow as a rule is that variable names, they can have underscore, they can have star, they can have asterisk, sorry, and they can have letters and digits and all that. But the thing is that variable name cannot be stored with a digit, so you cannot start with 1, 2, 3, 4. It has to be either letter or it has to be underscore. Yes? And as we said before, if you're naming a variable, don't use some of the key words that are reserved in Python. For example, don't name your variable then or if or else, right? Because these are keywords that are already reserved by Python. So you need to have a look at Appendix A to learn what are the reserved words. So you guys don't like mistakenly name your variable as the same keywords that are already used in Python. And variable also can be of any length. It can be as if you want it to be descriptive and people know what it means, it can be of any length, so it doesn't matter. So let's start with the program and see how variables actually change through the value of variables change throughout the execution of the code. So first here, what is the amount that is assigned to radius at this point? Exactly. So is it integer or is it real? Is a float.
So it's real?
Exactly. How does it know? How does Python know that?
That's the best.
You guys have studied. Good. So now we want to calculate area. Whatever is in radius, it would be assigned to radius here and here, and we can calculate area, right? And then we print the value of area and radius in this print function. So then we execute this, so we compute the second area, we execute this line. This time, radius is assigned to an area based on the new value of radius. It has a new value, and area will be 12 something something. And we print the area at the end of the last value that have been assigned to area and last value that has been assigned to radius. Yes, so each time that you assign a new value, the previous value will be erased. So radius is not 1 anymore, it's 2. Yes? So let's have a look at another expression, how we can assign expression. So at the beginning, you assign 1 to variable x. You assign 1.0 to variable to radius. X has a new value based on the expression. So you also can assign expression to a variable. It doesn't have to be only just one value. You can just have multiple expressions assigned to x. And as you can see, the value of x at this point, when the program execution is here, then is not 1 anymore. It has a new value that is replaced by 1. So then here, first, you guys tell me whether this is a correct assignment or not.
It is, but y doesn't have a value.
Exactly. So you haven't defined y before and doesn't know what is the value of y. So it will give you an error. But if you have previously defined y and you said y is equal 1, then it knows. So 1 plus 1 is x is 2. Right? So first you have to define a variable, then use it in your code. And basically at the end you're calculating radius. We have defined radius previously, it has a value, we have assigned a value. So we can compute area at this point. So now let's look at how we can. So do we have to always, if we have several variables I, j, k, do I have to each time go I is equal 1, j is equal 1, k is equal 1? I could do that, but also you can just write it like this. So all of them are assigned 1 at the same time. Right, so you don't have to go separately and assign each variable or initialize each variable at the beginning at least. So this is another specific to Python where you can have a simultaneous assignment. So you can have variable 1, variable 2 to variable n, and then you can see that variable 1 will get the first expression, variable 2 gets the second expression, and variable n gets the end expression. So that kind of makes it easy. In programming languages, other programming languages that they don't have this simultaneous assignment. When you want to swap a value between two variables, what you do usually, you have to use a third variable. So if x, sorry?
Essentially to hold the value.
Sorry?
Essentially to hold the value.
Exactly, because they don't have simultaneous assignment, right? So you have x equal 1, y is equal to
5, 2, 10.
So yes, anything. So what you have is that you have x is equal 1, y is equal to. We want to swap the two values, right? So what you do, you have to use another variable temp. So what you do, you say temp is equal x. So temp now is 1, right? X is equal to, x is equal y. So x means now is 2, and then y is equal 10.
I know we had those problems in chapter 2 of the, I think, my programming lab. Something similar to that. I wasn't quite sure how to do it. I just saw it on there.
Yeah,
Okay.
that's how you do it, because it's not simultaneous, and if you say x is equal y, you just erase the value of y. So you want to save it so you can suit it. Right? But here we have a simultaneous assignment, so we are able to do that, and we don't need temp anymore. So that's how you can swap the variables. Also, because of that, when we previously wrote a program that calculated the average, we had to write this line 3 times. But now we can say input, so we can ask a user for 3 numbers, and each time assign them to one value to number 1, second value to number 2, and third value to number 3. Yes? Okay.
So it'll assign them all respectively?
Yes,
Okay.
exactly. As long as you have a variable here, it will input to it. So what happens if here I don't enter 3, I enter something else, I enter in string. Would that be okay?
We calculate the value of that particular.
I say like, instead of, it asks me for a number, but I enter hello. What happens?
Runtime.
What happens? Runtime error. Because val, it has to evaluate a string into number, but it cannot. It doesn't have it. So it get an. We later talk about how you can handle errors if your user instead of number enters in a string, later on in later chapters, we will teach you how you can prevent a runtime error from happening, and you can basically catch that error and tell the user, you have entered a string, you need to enter a number. So, but right now, your program just crashes and gives you a runtime error, which is good for you. So that's the simultaneous assignment. Constant. There are some variables that they are constant. Their value does not change throughout the program, right? In some other programming languages, you have to use the keyword const. So you can say const pi, for example. Then program knows that pi would not change throughout your code execution. It's always constant. But Python does not have that keyword. So you have to use your own rule and write variables that are constant in uppercases, so you know that the value of pi will stay constant throughout the execution of the code. Yes? So constant variables are different from normal variables that throughout the execution of code their value changes. So you cannot assign a new value to pi. You can't say pi is equal 1.
If we do that, does Python stop us from assigning a new variable, or is it just common sense don't?
It doesn't. Python does not have that, but the other programming
Might have it.
they do have it.
Okay.
They have constant, and they will actually give you an error.
Okay, but Python won't give you an error.
No.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. So that's for the constant, and I've told you there are two types of numerical data type in Python. It's integer, such as 3, 4, and it's float 3.0 and 4.0 is an example of that. There are several numerical operations that we use when we program. You guys have already seen addition. You have seen subtraction. It could be executed on both data types, right? These are easy. Multiplication, float division, which gives you the float division in the result is float. Integer division, you also use this in your previous lab assignment 5, which gives you an integer value. So the same 1 divided by 2. In the float division will give you 0.5, but in integer division it gives you just truncates the fractional part and gives you whole number, which is 0.
When do we use integer division in the lab? Because I mean, I did regular just division.
So you should use integer division.
Oh, well, okay.
Yeah. Exponential. So that's how we show it here. In other programmings, they usually show it like this. So that's, I mean, it doesn't have that. It uses this sign, but so use this for exponentiation. 4 to the power of 0.5 is like a square root, so it gives you 2. This will be used for remainder if you want to know the remainder of two numbers. So 20 divided by 3, the remainder is 2, right? Questions? Are you good? So here we just talk about more about the remainder operation. So this is basically the divisor, this is the dividend, and 7 is the remainder. We will do some more practice how you can use remainders. For example, we can use it to recognize the difference between odd and even number, right? So we will talk about it a little bit more. Overflow, so if you use a really large number, like here, we say 245 to the power of 1000, you get an overflow error, so the result is too large, we can't handle it. So you get that error. That's what overflow means. Scientific notation. So if you you have a number like this, that means this part multiply 10 to the power of 2, right? So in order to make it programming easier and say 10 to the power of 5 or 10 to the power of -5, we use scientific notation such as these, as you can see, and this means multiply 10 to the power of 2, which gives you this, and this expression means multiply this number with 10 to the power of -2, which will result in this. You can either use capital E or a lowercase e for the scientific notation. And if you are given a mathematical expression such as this, you have basically to translate it so Python can understand you. You can use 4x. It doesn't know what that is, so you have to say 4 multiply x, and so you have to basically break down so it can understand what you are trying to do or what do you mean. There are priorities on how the operations are handled. The highest priority it's given to parentheses. So whatever is in parentheses, it will be calculated first. In this case, for example, between all of these, this one has the highest priority. Then we have multiplication, so wherever we have a multiplication, that has the second highest priority. Then you would go to addition, and then you would go to subtraction. Yes?
Does exponents factor in at all in that?
Exponentiation has the highest.
Okay, I just didn't see that.
It doesn't have, we don't have it in our example, but it has the highest priority. It's higher than multiplication. Good question.
Yeah, I was just making.
Is it higher than parentheses?
Good question.
Is it higher than parentheses?
Yes.
I was making a type, I understood. Yeah. What I need to be careful with.
So you can make these a little bit easier while you are coding, and you can use it like this. So that means whatever is in I, variable I, add 8 to it and reassign it to I. Yes, so it's same as here, but it just makes it a little bit easier to code. Yes. So here is the same as this one. So you say whatever is in variable f, just subtract 8 from it and then reassign it to f. Yes.
So if we had a more complicated thing than just adding, subtracting, multiplication, or division, we have to literally go I equals that. There's no shortcut or anything. If it's more complicated, like
If no, so it has to interpret what you mean, right?
Okay.
And these are already coded, so you have to kind of like translate it so you can understand you.
okay.
Yes. So these are some operators that you can use in your coding. Sometimes you need to convert between different data types, right? For example, you are given a float and you want to convert it to integer. So what integer does, it basically truncates this part and just gives you the whole, so 4. Or if you have an integer that is 4 and you want to convert it to float, then you have to use function float, so it can convert it to a float variable. Also, you can convert anything to a string using str function, and it translates that or converts that to a string. There's a difference between integer and round number. So round basically rounds to the highest number, so it's closest highest number. So 4.6 becomes 5, and around 4.5 becomes 4, right? So it's different from integer, that it just drops the fractional part. So that was part of like just the elementary programming that we went into. Now we want to talk about software development and software